inappropriate development of residential gardens. We are arguing that that is this. The draft 2014 plan states that garden land should be protected and that existing dwelling plots should not be subdivided. And whilst that isn't actually agreed yet, it's becoming more important because we are anticipating that it's shortly to be agreed. As I argued earlier, this is an application too far. Please do not allow an extant permission where residents stood back to allow a compromise to justify approval of this new application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so we've heard the objectors, we've heard the councillor, and we've heard the agent. We should discuss this matter amongst ourselves. So, is there anyone who wishes to speak? Councillor Saris.
Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid I don't like this application at all. And I don't like it for all the reasons set out by the conservation team. And I think in the context of, we have these conservation areas for a reason, and given we have them, I think we need to put a great deal of weight on the issues the conservation team raise. I think there's a manifest difference. I think that there is also some tension between the position of the officer and the position of the conservation team. There's a manifest difference between fully occupying a garden site with these houses and the existence of garden structures in parts of neighbouring gardens. I don't think the report is comparing like with like there. And I think that's this is one of the crucial points that the conservation team is making. So I will certainly be voting against this.
Is there any other person? Yes, Councillor Smart.
So thanks to the speakers. Yeah, I mean, when you stand in that back garden there, look around you, there are some small sheds, some slightly larger sheds, but it isn't very well developed in terms of like large studio buildings there, like you might see on Private Street or something like that. It's really quite small scale. I appreciate that the developer has attempted to minimise the impact by lowering the site, lowering the building, basically digging a great big hole, putting it in it, which isn't necessarily a good thing. I don't believe people should need to do halls really to mitigate against the problems of being overseen by other residents and sort of minimising the impact of the building in the back gardens. The problem is that even with that lowered sort of height, it's still a very, very large block of stuff in the back gardens. It's very wide and it's very, it's like a square piece of stuff that all the residents of those houses on Cavendish Street are going to look over. It's not a suitable development really for a back garden. So I really concur with the approach from the conservation team, as Councillor Saris has already alluded to. With regard to this development, I did feel that something would close the call, but as I hear people speak and hear the residents speak and thought more about it, I do feel that this is an overdevelopment of that site. I'm concerned also by what has been said about the way the applicant has levered 3 units into this site by not working in a coherent and transparent and honest way, perhaps, with residents. I say perhaps, so I don't know for sure. But it's better, as I said in the previous thing this morning, previous item, is that if applicants are clear about what they want to achieve on a site from the start and stick to that, then that's a much better way for us all to work together. If they're going to start changing the application along the way, we're going to have a different view of things, naturally. The other small point was on the existing car parking, 6 car parking spaces of 101 that was agreed in 1991. I presume that that's still available to that site. This doesn't take it away from that site. I'd like to answer that, please. And also, if the car parking space is still there for 101, does that mean that we're taking away amenity space from 101 by this development? And is that a concern? I'm not quite sure under planning law whether we need to consider that or not. So I think that's all I need to say really. Just to sum up, it's too big, it's overdevelopment, and I'll be voting against. I think yes, I can hear a good reason from somebody else around the table.
Kevin Blanco.
Thank you, Chair. Clearly we start from a position where a two-unit, two-bed development has been approved. Now, that's the starting point, I think, of our deliberation, and we have to assess objections against that background in terms of what impact and harm this extra dwelling is likely to cause in terms of development as a whole, because that would be the basis of any discussion subsequent to any decision we make, should that be the case. I think the issue here for me is it's a case of balance in terms of both the amenity impacts on the potential residents and, of course, the existing residents on the two properties at the frontage. I think this drawing actually, for me, the drawings that are up on the board at the moment, I think have sort of hardened my view that actually this is tipping the balance in a negative way, and I'll try and explain that with reference to this drawing. By squeezing another unit within this plot, which I understand is a financial logic and which was arguably planning logic to do so, but if you look at the impact, the property to the north has therefore lost some of its own amenity space at the Cavendish Road side, and accepting that there's a railway behind, that will be the focus of amenity, I think, provision for the new units at the front of the Cavendish Road side. And to me, the northern unit has clearly lost a fair bit of its own amenity space. Yes, there's some shared space, but it actually loses some of its amenity space, and there's an impact on the other two units as well. So in terms of the impact on the amenity space of the three compared to the two, I think it's tipped the balance in an acceptable way. The other issue for me is the conservation area. It's a conservation area, not a preservation area. There's a big difference, and people tend to conflate the two. It's a conservation area. There's a reason why various attributes need to be protected and conserved. But here we have an example where we have, in effect, yes, there's the underclock. There are two properties at the frontage on the existing Cavendish Road frontage, yet we have three behind them. And to me, I'll pick up a point raised by one of the speakers, to me this is not subservient to the frontage. A 2 for 2 has a bit of symmetry, a bit of logic, and a bit of streetscape, I think, balance. 3, I think, is tipping it the wrong way again. So on those 2 points, I think this is tipped the balance against what is acceptable on this site, in this context.
Councillor Hart.
Right, okay. There's nothing we can do about the already approved application because it was delegated powers. However, I've got some questions. On the proposed scheme, the ground floor, which is underground, I'm just confused how light. You've got the roof. You have ground floor, and you have what appears to be windows kind of in the roof, but actually you've got the lower ground floor, which has no windows at all. Okay, so I'm confused by natural light and how that would work. You know, as a way of living, and also I'm concerned about the design because I'm not an architect, I'm not a design expert, but basically when you look at the elevation plans, to me they just look like a row of garages with kind of glazed fronts. You know, they're just absolutely, there's no kind of
Character.
no anything. It's just a row of large garages and with glass fronts. That's how I see it. And this is a conservation area. I mean, I'm just, again, as I've stated, we had no input into the planning application for the two dwellings. So that's happened, and we are where we are. But we might, the conservation team have given, 4 sound reasons why they do not support the application, and I support that because it's just hideous. I'm sorry. Okay, that's subjective. That's just my opinion. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. I wonder if the officers would go to the, in addition to discussing the points which have been raised, since it was determined by delegated authority, maybe we could have a brief summary of the reasons why it was thought that this would be a desirable development. I mean, I think it would be useful to restate the principal reasons.
Chair, I'll come in on that one because I was involved with the very original scheme which Councillor Benjamin mentioned, and then the approved scheme. That original scheme, from memory, actually was much more substantial above ground, and we certainly felt that would have had issues in terms of character and enclosure on those neighbouring gardens. So the developers went away and came back with this 2-bedroom scheme, which is sunken into the ground. I think
Sorry, the 2-bedroom scheme was also sunken.
The approved scheme is also sunken into the ground. Now, I think our approach with this site is that firstly there's a kind of clear access through underneath the undercroft from Cavendish Road into the rear of the site. This is, when you go to site, it is a substantial piece of land which, to my mind, is capable of accommodating some form of residential development on it. Now, not only is it a substantial bit of land in terms of its width, but if you look at the actual kind of depth of that land, it's as mentioned in the committee report, I think it's something like 40 to 50 metres to the front of Cavendish Road. So our feeling in terms of one's perception of the conservation area and the impact of this scheme is that it would not be or feel like a substantial incursion into it because of its scale. And I think what's really difficult is that there is this extant permission, and in effect what's happening is the scheme is marginally widening to either boundary, and that flat roof element that you see between the two pitches is being filled in. And where I am struggling as a planning officer is to try and work out, based on what you're saying, how I would just tackle an appeal statement if I was asked to make one, because I'm pretty sure that the applicants would appeal against any refusal. And I'm trying to work out what additional harm we're talking about here and how we quantify that. Yes, it is a wider, fatter scheme, but is that additional harm with the refusal of planning permission? And I would just posit that thought into members' minds when they go on to discuss. I'll leave Michael to tackle some of the other issues.
Thank you very much, Toby.
Just to come back to the other points, in terms of the car parking and potential to displace once approved, I went through the old plans on the microfiche filter, and there was a car parking layout. This was back when we used to have minimum car parking standards, and so for 103 Cavendish Road, that was converted into 3 flats, I believe it was. They had to provide 6 car parking spaces. They're positioned in this space here. That's where the layout plan is showing them. So this white blob, if you would, that's outside the red line boundary. So I think, in theory, according to this plan, I don't think this would impact on that layout. Obviously, that's where you have people potentially using that as a pedestrian route coming through there, but that is shown as where the 6 car parking spaces are going on this plan. So, in terms of the other main points, Councillor Hart was interested in. In terms of lower ground floor, they all have light wells that have sort of 25-degree lines of sight, if you follow the mouse, which kind of go up and above. So if you're in the centre of that window, take a 25-degree line through there, you'd be looking sort of up and over, and usually in terms of BRE guidance, that's what they recommend, that there's an uninterrupted 25-degree line going through that provides enough daylight and sunlight. So for that lower ground floor in the basement, we feel that light wells are an acceptable solution to that. But I think Toby's covered the character as it matters, so that's what I was going to respond to, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to make a few points if I may. First of all, I think it's important to bear in mind, I know this is all perfectly obvious, but it needs restating. There was never an application before this committee for 3 houses on this site. That proposal was voluntarily withdrawn by the developer. Secondly, the existing situation is a principal planning consideration. It's not something subsidiary, it's absolutely substantial. That this site already has permission for buildings approximately of this scale, and even including the sinking of the building into the ground. All of that has been, if you like, approved, and should this go to appeal, the inspector will take his first or her first question will be, what does the extant permission permit? So I think we have to be very careful to consider what is to be gained by a refusal of this application. What is to be gained? I shall vote against it. I accept that this is sufficient of an extension of the previous scheme to my mind, to be unacceptable. I think, in view of what Toby Collins has said, that if this were to go to appeal, let us always remember that there are some appeals where I think we're on such difficult and uncertain ground that it's almost irresponsible to risk going to appeal. But I, for one, would be very happy to defend this decision, if it's one of refusal, at appeal. Very happy to do it. But having said all of that, and I think I've tried to be balanced in respect to my remarks, I think we now proceed, unless you have any further comments, we will go to the vote. The recommendation of the officers is one of approval. Those in favour of accepting that, please indicate. Those who are against? We're unanimously against. Now we need to discuss the reasons for our objection. And may I just remind you that your reasons should be confined to the effect of the new application as it differs from the extant permission. So questions about digging into the ground and so on are not germane because they've already been permitted. So on that basis, would you like to suggest your reasons for refusal? Councillor Blenker.
I think it falls under 310, Chair.
Yes.
I certainly believe the application before us has a negative impact on the community space for both the proposed particularly properties, but also in terms of the overall site. So it does have a bearing on the existing. And I think this issue of the 3 in the rear of 2 properties detracts from the prevailing character and the context of the area, which I think is the point the conservation officer is making.
These will, if these are the only, if these are the grounds, this is the grounds that we will adduce in favour of the refusal. Are there any other grounds? Councillor Smart.
Yeah, well, I think it's too big a development. The block of stuff that we're planning to build there is just too big in that sort of garden area.
Too big, do you mean that it is too much of an extension over the
Yeah, the square meterage, you know, in plan is much bigger than the original, and I think it's too much. And also, as Councillor Blanco said earlier, I think, you know, because it's not subservient to the existing dwellings at the front, that's wrong as well.
Now, I'm going to pause for a moment, so we will, if you will all remain in your seats, because I need to consult our principal planning officer.
Chair, it would read as follows. The proposed development, which has a greater footprint and mass than the approved scheme, and which subdivides the site into 3 separate residential curtilages, would have a harmful impact on the character of the area, which forms part of the Mill Road Conservation Area, represent an overdevelopment of the site, and result in a poor standard of residential amenity for future occupiers, contrary to Cambridge Local Plan 2006 policies 34, 310, 411.
So that would be the reason for refusal. If anyone wants to question the wording of that reason, no, not right. Councillor Smart?
So I presume it's best not to talk about being subservient to the front sort of houses that are along there. Don't say about that.
I think officers have had a chance to reflect on that, and what is your view?
I think the wording of that reason for refusal would allow scope in the statement to explore that issue.
Character, talk about character.
Very good. So that's the reason worded in that form for your decision. Those are... Yes, do please.
Through you, new chair, I've got to remind us that we need to wait for the Network Rail comment to come back.
Yes, yes.
So whatever decision we make will have to be delegated until that point.
And how retrospectively will the Network Rail matter affect the extent permission? If we think it's important enough to raise at this stage, and we didn't raise it previously, are we now obliged to raise it with them?
In response, Chair, we actually did consult as part of the previous one, but they didn't make any comments. We had a chance to, but this one we didn't consult them, so that's why. Yeah.
So this might be heavier and deeper and therefore more threatening to their rail line. But anyway, that is the reason for refusal. We're now going to vote on whether you are satisfied. You voted to refuse already. Are you satisfied with the reason as worded by Toby Collins? Toby Green, sorry. Those of you who are, please indicate. So unanimous approval for your wording. Thank you so much for your help. Right. It's a unanimous refusal.